If you look around my office, you might realize I have kind of a love for dark, twisted cartoons. And a lot of that may be because I grew up with a lot of dark, twisted cartoons. Now, I'm not talking about the ones like Batman or ones that were meant for older kids. I'm talking about the ones that were meant for little kids, and they probably should have been made for little kids. And I loved the hell out of them. I enjoyed how much they scared me. I loved how every time you got through one, you felt a little tougher. So I'm doing a series reacting and reviewing them. We're gonna analyze how creative they are, how dark they are, and if the dark, twisted tone was warranted. So join me in taking a look at some dark tunes. You know what It's a Wonderful Life needed more of? The apocalypse. Speed Demon was released in 2000. It's said to be one of the darkest Powerpuff Girl episodes ever made. Let's take a look.
Come on.
Now this episode has some really good angles in it, and one of my favorites is right here at the beginning with Buttercup looking at the clock. What I like is not only the low tilted angle, but also how well the clock fits in her eyes, with the numbers in the green, the arms in the black, and then the rim sort of being on the rim of her eye as well. It's a very nicely composed shot. This was also definitely me in school.
But if Billy threw his apple to Sally at a trajectory of 1.8 meters per second...
I always took this as the teacher being a little frustrated that she's teaching basic math even though she knows these really advanced equations. And supposedly the reason they travel forward through time with how fast they're going is explained in this equation. In fact, if you look close, there's a lot of references to other famous movies and shows that did time travel, like there's the flux capacitor from Back to the Future, the Enterprise going back in time. She even ends by saying 50 years, which I believe is the amount of time that passes after they fly forward.
Time would pass somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 years.
So a fun thing to freeze frame and look over when you get a chance.
A whole weekend away from the city of Townsville and the hotline phone.
I always kind of like the episodes of superhero shows where it shows they're kind of frustrated, helping people out, they need a break, they want someone else to do it. I think it's something that's very identifiable. This is something they tackle a couple times in the show, and especially with them just being little kids, I think it makes a lot of sense. Sadly, a small mistake here. When the girls are hugging here, you'll notice that Blossom's eyelid kind of vanishes. And not only did they miss that, but it's a repeated animation, which means they play the same frames over and over, so you see it vanish a lot, which is sadly unfortunate. Maybe she just likes wearing monocles now.
Which one of you slowpokes wants to race me home? On your mark, get set, go!
So what's intriguingly bizarre about this episode is how the time travel happens. Not necessarily that they're going so fast that time slows down, speeds up, whatever, is that there's not much of them learning too grand of a lesson here. Like, they just say, oh, it'd be nice to get away from the city, let's race. Like, it's such a leap, where most stories like this would build up, oh, what would it be like if you weren't helping the city or something like that. But this just jumps right into it, and I think part of that is because they just want to get to this destroyed future, because that's always the fun part of these stories, is seeing in what way is the future just totally screwed up. And of course, it's not the Powerpuff Girls without showing a bunch of anime action lines in the background, but these are very unique. You don't usually see this type, and I think that was a very clever way of showing this isn't just them normally going their usual speed. They're going much faster to a point where it's altering space and time. So I think freezing it, playing with the colors, playing with these kind of different brushstrokes, and on top of that, using CG in this as well, I think it's a very clever but subtle way of showing that something different is happening here.
I told you I'd win.
Clever setup here. You notice we're only seeing a close-up of the door, and we're only seeing a close-up of the wall in pictures. You're not seeing the entire room. You're not seeing the entire house. So you're thinking you're just back at home, but obviously you're gonna see it's anything but. Alright, this is where the fun artistry happens, where you get some really fun shadows, some really dynamic shapes here that, again, are very simple. There's not like a lot of shading in this show, but the way they have the colors and the shapes distributed, it gives the illusion of a lot of depth. I mean, look how you have the door that's far away, you have the spider web that's really close, and all these other little scientific gadgets, and there's practically no shading in this at all. It's very simple colors, but they know where to place them, so it it gives a lot more dimension. Where usually the backgrounds are very straight or with a lot of curves and nice colors, here these are very crooked, they're very sharp, they're very intimidating, it's very cluttered. So you already know something is very, very off.
Sugar, spice, and powdered rice. Why didn't I write it down?
I love this joke. Not only can he not remember the ingredients to how he made the Powerpuff Girls, but he also didn't write it down. Like, why wouldn't you write that down, even if it's just 3 simple ingredients?
It can't be. My mind playing tricks on me again.
There's something particularly sad about this idea that he's saying my mind is playing tricks on me again and he's threatened by them. It just shows that he's fantasized about them being back several times, which I think just adds to the tragedy of all this.
Stay back. Leave me alone.
I also like his life is so broken that when his cane breaks, he just has to tape it back together. So now you have the reveal of the house and the whole future, in fact, and that's all destroyed. And I really snicker at the fact that they never put together that they were in a totally different house that was destroyed. I mean, how could you not notice that?
What happened?
Red is always a very popular apocalyptic color to use in cartoons. Have a red sky with dark clouds, and there's a reason. It looks great. I mean, red is a great color, but when you combine it with shades of black and gray and you just see it everywhere, there's no other variety, it can look very, very intimidating. Red is usually said to be the color of danger. That's why you'll see it in movies usually representing danger. These buildings kind of look like construction paper that were very sloppily cut out. And you could say like, oh, well, that looks very sloppy, but I think it looks great. I think there's such an artistry to these simple shapes and very carefully chosen colors. Or carefully chosen shades of red, I should say.
Call the girls, I said. Call the Powerpuff Girls!
Now, of course, this is a character whose face you never see, but it's kind of more terrifying that you don't see in this because the voice sounds very different, and just seeing those hands with the long nails and the little boils and warts and so forth, this is usually a very kind, supportive character. Usually it's the character that's kind of doing the real work behind the scenes at the mayor's office, and here she is just totally destroyed, and all you have to go off of is her hands, and it's just, that's enough. You don't need much more.
And now it's too late. He's gone.
So not only are you being told that the mayor is dead, I mean, man, what a leap from just taking a race to just being in this future where everybody's dead. But you have just this very creepy voice. I mean, this is a voice that I think would just terrify any kid watching this, and I think the leap from what's usually like a very action-packed show, but not usually that dark and heavy, to just suddenly throw this right in the middle of all of that, right out of nowhere. It's very ballsy.
I just stood there waving goodbye.
This one's probably the most disturbing.
I just stood there waving goodbye.
Again, you're used to seeing this teacher, this very kind teacher that's very, you know, loving and nice to them, just standing there, because you know that's the last time you saw her was she was waving goodbye, and she literally just says, I was standing there waving goodbye. Like, it doesn't even make sense to say that. That makes it even creepier that her mind is just that gone, and to a point where she can't even see them. They're right in front of her. She can't even register that they're right there. At least the professor could acknowledge that he thinks he's hallucinating. She doesn't even see them. This is so twisted.
50 years, 50 years, 50 years.
That's definitely a Ren and Stimpy inspired close-up on the eyes, even though it's not done by the background artist. You can tell that was heavily inspired by that.
Don't you know, the faster you go, time slows down.
And here we're shown what's said to be the Powerpuff Girls' scariest villain. Understandably so, him, which is already a very funny name to have, but this dude, everything from his design to that creepy smile to that weird voice, he's just very unsettling. I'm glad this is the villain they went with for this episode.
Seconds, minutes, hours, days and nights crawl by on hands and knees as you race the speed of light.
Now that's a quote from probably my favorite Twilight Zone episode, Time Enough at Last. Also clever here, sort of showing a history of what happened in the past 50 years just through these posters. Rear Window did something like that, trying to do as much as they can without having to say it, trying to visually show the passage of time. Again, you can put together what happened, but sometimes seeing the details can just be so much more disturbing. Another really fun angle here. So if you're gonna do Disney and you want an angle like that, you'd have to measure it all out because everything had to be proportionate, you know, it's a more realistic style. Whereas something like this, it's already very simplified and exaggerated, so you can go as big with this as you want. The circle doesn't have to be a perfect circle. It doesn't have to be a perfect triangle with the angle. You can really, really exaggerate things. You can, in a sense, kind of go even bigger with it.
It's your fault for leaving.
Powerpuff Girls.
Making all the people kind of pasty white, kind of like my skin white, haha, and having that in contrast against the red really helps them stand out. So again, you have two very uncomfortable elements, these sort of sunken in zombie looking people and this red dark sky background. This is kind of like the emotional climax of the short, and you can see it not just in the story, but just visually how it's done. I think it really, really plays well and is very, very uncomfortable.
It's your fault. Your fault.
Another great angle that in terms of scale doesn't make a lot of sense, but you can just quickly pick up how it's supposed to work, where everybody is supposed to be and what they're trying to get across.
No. What have we done?
You just raced, that's it. Like, it's a very bizarre episode. Like I said, it doesn't always make a ton of sense. But man, for a little kid to be watching this and seeing this imagery and hearing your fault over and over, it's very, very intense for a child to see. I like everything got so apocalyptic, even the earth is red. Like, did the water dry up and is that just the Red Canyon? Like, it's a great touch. So they race and go back in time, and instantly everything's back to normal. They didn't even have to really do that much to put things back the way they're supposed to be. But there is this lesson.
We can't leave Townsville, even for one weekend. Can you imagine what would happen if we weren't here to protect it?
Isn't that the exact moral you would get from this? I mean, just beginning to end, that's all I was saying to myself. That's what this episode's about. So there you go, that Speed Demon, what's said to be one of the darkest Powerpuff Girls episodes. I can see why. I don't know if I can say structurally from like a storytelling point of view, it's that great an episode because it is just so random and things are not set up that great and they're resolved a little too quickly. But that's also kind of what's fun about it. I think the episode just wanted to jump straight into this what-if scenario, and it just wanted to go ridiculously dark for almost no reason. I almost feel like they almost had to shoehorn in the lesson because people are just, you know, whatever, Cartoon Network, whoever, would just be like, well, why did this happen? Why did any of this happen? So that's their fast way of getting around it, I guess, because there's not really much accepting of the lesson, and they're not even, like, really that wrong in the beginning. Like, they were just gonna take a break, and then the lesson is don't take a break, I suppose. Kids need those little jabs every once in a while. Just be like, hey, don't get too comfortable. I like it. I like the art style of it. I like the angles of it. I like the shadows, and as I mentioned before, the different shades of red. I do wish it was structurally a little bit more sound in terms of the story, but that's also kind of what makes it so unique, is that it's just not even trying to tell, like, It's a Wonderful Life, anything like that. It's just sort of showing this terrible future for not really much of a solid reason and not even giving that much character to it. Aside from the fact that you do see how these characters not only rely on them, but how jarring it would be if these people you've gotten to know were either dead or just mentally destroyed and living in this terrible future. So it's effective. It definitely gets a response out of people, it seems like. And let me know, did it get a response out of you? Did you grow up with it, or are you just seeing it now and you were like, where the hell did that come from? Did you actually learn a lesson from it, or are you just like, I didn't learn shit from that, I just knew it scared me and it stayed with me, and sometimes it's like a haunted house, that can be enough. So let me know your thoughts. Hey everyone, I got a couple of these lined up. If there's any particular cartoon you want me to look at as being very dark or twisted, leave it in the comments below. Again, I'm not really looking for movie scenes or cartoons meant for teenagers or older. I'm talking about ones meant for little kids, but still scare the shit out of you. Whether it's an old cartoon or a new cartoon, let me know what you want me to look at.